The Maybach tore through the city streets, tires squealing as it whipped around corners. Xander sat in the back, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrest, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle ticked rapidly in his cheek. Linda sat beside him, the triumphant glow completely erased from her face. She reached out, placing a timid hand on his knee. Xander, what did Marcus mean? 30% of the voting shares? Xander ignored her, his eyes fixed blindly on the rain-slicked road ahead. 30%. He currently held 15%. With another 30, his control over the Beaumont empire would be absolute. He wouldn't just be the CEO, he would be the undisputed, unchallengeable sovereign. But the catch, the devastating, brilliant catch his mother had engineered, was that the transfer of those shares was inextricably tied to his marriage to April Dalton. And Marcus had mentioned his brother, Julian Beaumont, the prodigal son who had spent the last 5 years running the European division with terrifying efficiency, preferring the shadows to the spotlight. If Julian was at the hotel, Xander pulled out his phone, dialing his mother's number. It went straight to voicemail. He dialed his head of security. Voicemail. He dialed his assistant. Sir, the assistant answered, breathless. What is happening at the hotel? Xander barked. Has the ceremony started, Mr. Beaumont? It's a spectacle, the assistant stammered. Madame Beaumont just made an announcement to the press. She officially transferred her 30% voting block to a joint marital trust. But sir, the groom's name on the legal documents. It's not yours. Xander felt the blood drain from his face. What do you mean it's not mine? Who is the groom? It's Julian, sir. Madame Beaumont announced that you had amicably stepped aside, and that Julian Beaumont would be stepping in as the groom to unite the two families. The phone slipped from Xander's hand, clattering onto the floorboard. Driver! Xander roared, his voice cracking. Faster, run the lights. I don't care, just get me to the hotel. Linda shrunk back against the leather seats, her eyes wide with terror. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. She was supposed to be the tragic heroine who won the billionaire's heart, proving that true love conquered all, including arranged marriages. She wasn't supposed to be the reason he lost an empire. Back at the hotel, the grand ballroom was a masterpiece of opulence. Thousands of white orchids cascaded from the ceiling, their sweet scent mingling with the expensive perfume of the city's elite. I stood near the altar, a glass of champagne in my hand, watching the doors. April looked stunning. She wore a simple, elegant silk gown that accentuated her delicate frame, her hair swept up in a classic chignon. But her eyes, though clear of fever, still held a lingering sadness. She wasn't entirely present. The trauma of the last few months had dulled the bright, ambitious spark that defined the April I knew. But I was going to get it back. Beside her stood Julian, my actual son in this bizarre reality, but a stranger to me nonetheless. I had summoned him from London 2 days ago. He was the antithesis of Xander. Where Xander was loud, arrogant, and prone to public displays of power, Julian was quiet, observant, and possessed a mind like a steel trap. He had agreed to the arrangement immediately, seeing the strategic brilliance of uniting the families and securing the voting bloc. More importantly, he looked at April not as a conquest or a burden, but with a quiet, respectful curiosity. Are you sure about this, Madame Beaumont? Julian asked softly, leaning in slightly. Xander is not going to let this go quietly. Let him make noise, I replied, taking a sip of champagne. Noise is the weapon of the powerless. By the time he arrives, the ink will be dry. The officiant cleared his throat, tapping the microphone. The low murmur of the crowd died down instantly. Ladies and gentlemen, the officiant began, his voice echoing through the silent ballroom. We are gathered here today. As the ceremony progressed, I watched April. She repeated her vows mechanically, her voice a soft, lifeless monotone. Julian, to his credit, spoke clearly and firmly, his eyes never leaving her face, trying to anchor her in